Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Saturday, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. I'm thrilled that you could all join us this evening because I have a very special guest star tonight, and that's Kimberly Faye Greenberg. Now, my show, for those of you who are here for the first time, is about celebrating artists and their body of worth. And Kimberly and I just sat down and we realized that it was almost exactly 10 years to the day that I interviewed you backstage at St. Luke's. You were in the midst of doing 2 off-Broadway shows at that time. And we sat down and we met for the first time. And as sometimes happens in this business, we remained friends. So I'm thrilled about that. And that's worth always celebrating. But Kimberly, I want to ask you, today marks 341 days since our theaters shut down. We are still in the midst of a pandemic. The good news on the horizon is that there is a vaccine. But I also I read in the New York Times this week, that could be 7 years before we get back to normal, which is petrifying, especially to those of us who are in the theater. So I want to ask, now that I started off with that, how are you doing really in the midst of this crazy world we find ourselves in?
It's been in such an interesting time. This question's always so strange because there are positives and negatives, I guess, to this time. I'm sorry if you hear my cat in the background. He's having
That's okay. It adds
perfect timing.
Yes.
I'm a person who loves time. So I embracing this time has been so good for me. Can you hear the fight that's happening behind me? It's hilarious. Hey guys, knock it out.
I love it. I love it. Because I'm an animal person. I have to shut my door. Otherwise, my cats would be in here all over the desk and everything. So
it's the first time they've ever fought when I'm actually on like a live interview. So there you go. They're making.
Well, maybe it's me. A couple of days ago, I was interviewing Patricia Ward Kelly about Gene Kelly, and her dogs started barking in the middle of all this.
Maybe it's something.
I've dealt with worse, so
okay, I'll just keep talking.
What they're doing.
I don't know. I found that the time has been integral. Oh wait, hold on. There, it's over. It's over.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is an episode of Cats. I
have 4 of them, but they're usually really nice to each other, except for right now. Okay, so that's the joy of being live. Yes. I was going to say time is really interesting because I've really embraced the time. I think before the pandemic, I've always been someone who does all these different things and running around like a chicken with its head cut off. And what's been so great right now is that I've had time to sort of sit back and think about what I want to change about consistently running around like a chicken with his head cut off. But I've also been able to expand on some things that I just would never have the time to do. So in that way, it's been great. But don't get me wrong, because I lost all my work too when everything shut off. I was swing dressing at Mean Girls on Broadway. I was the wardrobe supervisor at Jazz Lincoln Center. I had several tour stops on my fabulous Fanny Brice show that travels the country, a show in Arizona. I had several other acting gigs lined up. So I, like everyone else, everything just kind of disappeared. So the first couple months were really tough. But as time has progressed, I've sort of created a routine because I realized that's absolutely integral to surviving in this time. And then just figuring out what motivates me now so that when we move out of the pandemic, I can approach my life a little bit more differently in the things that I want to be doing or don't want to be doing, or what I want that to look like when we get out. So it's been very interesting. I mean, I moved during this time, not very far, but I did move to another place where I'm living.
You moved in the midst of the pandemic?
I did. That wasn't planned. I was selling my condo. I put it on the market about a month before the pandemic. And I'm so grateful that I actually did, because I don't know if I could have been living where I was living at this point in time. I didn't move very far. I literally moved like 3 blocks from my old apartment into a little bit of a bigger place for some life planning things. I needed a little bit of a bigger place. I
have to ask, because they've already made an appearance tonight. Was the move easy on your cats?
It was that was the last thing I did, and it was scaring me to death. But in all honesty, it was quite easier than I thought it was going to be, because there was no furniture left. There was nowhere for them to hide. And I literally caught one at a time and walked them down the street to my new apartment. And then they all hid in the closet for about 4 days. And then they finally came out. And now they're great. Obviously, they're great now.
No, they're great. Now, you say that you run around like a chicken with its head chopped off, your phrase. But,
yes.
But the fact of the matter is, you do a lot. I mean, people have said to me that they thought that I was the hardest working person in show business. But I tip my hat to you.
Oh,
I mean, it amazes me. It's even at the beginning of your resume that you were doing 2 off-Broadway shows at the same time.
Yeah.
And I will explain how that's done for those people out there who say that's an impossibility. The shows were running in repertory at St. Luke's Theater, which I don't know if you've heard has suffered also.
I have, yes.
COVID.
Yeah, I did. So it's very unfortunate. That place was such a nice stomping ground for so many actors and performers and shows. So it's,
as in company
unfortunate. Yes. So it's kind of unfortunate. But yeah, I was doing those shows at the same time, and I was also dressing a show down the street on the next block over, Billy Elliot, on Broadway as well, like as a swing. So I would do a show. I would go to the Imperial, and I would come in the middle of the first act, and it would be the time for the big tutu girl quick change for anyone who's seen the show. And I would start there, and I would do that in my pin curls and my lashes, and then the show would be over, and then I run back to St. Luke's, and I would do a show in the evening, and it continued for a long time. So yeah.
No, how did you compartmentalize these 2 shows in your head? I mean, you're a lot younger than I am, but I can't even imagine. I mean, learning 2 completely different shows. Although I did repertory when I first started out, but what was your process? I'm sure that one of them was already up and running before you got the other show.
Yeah, well, I actually got the other show. I was originally doing Danny and Sylvia, and that was running for, I think, almost a year before I was actually doing One Night with Fanny Brice, because the creator of that show saw me in Danny and Sylvia, and that's kind of how the process begun. And then I spent a good year workshopping One Night with Fanny Brice as well before it actually opened off-Broadway. So I had been actually compartmentalizing for a long time, but they were so completely different. I mean, yes, I was playing 2 Jewish broads, legends, but the shows were totally 2 different things. So I had to make sure that I could change my mindset. Honestly, thinking back on it, I don't quite know how I did that. Like, thinking about that now, I don't know. You know what I mean? Something clicks in your actor brain, and it just kind of works. I don't know. I really just don't have any idea.
Now, I know that I would consider you a workaholic. Would you consider yourself a workaholic?
Oh yeah, self-proclaimed workaholic.
And because we're in the midst of this pandemic now, was it easy for you to take a pause and say, okay, this is being forced upon me, or did you fight it?
No, and quite frankly, I'll admit that I think I'm just as much as a workaholic in a different way now than I was before the pandemic, because I'm so all about, okay, I have like, I'm broadcasting my solo show, Fabulous Fanny Brice, and, I'm doing things like taking class so that when we're out of the pandemic or we're starting to move through it now, I've been still auditioning for projects and things like that. So I have this still not sit still mentality. I still find it very difficult to like even take a day off, which I do need. But it's that, oh my God, keep going, make things happen so that later I can have some sort of something from this time that has also helped to like just continue to push me forward. But I also feel like it is what keeps me kind of going. I'm very much like a person who just loves what I do and loves work. And I don't really know how to turn it off. And I actually,
I'm going to ask you a personal question. Cats excluded. Are you? I mean, do you live alone, or do you have a roommate?
No, I live alone, and I actually, one of my life goals, another reason why I like push so hard and have so many things that I like want to like start to create income and things like that if I can, is I want to adopt. So I want to adopt a foster child. And I actually started the process before the pandemic, about a year before the pandemic. But unfortunately, that's actually why I moved, because I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment so I could adopt somebody.
Wow.
But everything came to a standstill once the pandemic.
And I ask this question respectfully: how are you going to fit that into everything else that's going on in your life?
Yeah, I'm going to just make it work like I do with everything else. It's just, that's a lifelong goal that I've actually really started openly sharing with people in the past year. It's something that I've kind of kept to myself.
Now you shared it with everybody.
I know, now everybody, thank you all. Now you know my big secret. But yeah, so it's just something else. And I mean, I want to adopt a teenager, so people are going, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm
well,
sure."
You know, the old adage, Carol Channing used to say, "Be careful what you wish for."
Yeah. So here we go. Yeah. So it will happen. It's just not going to happen until we get out of the pandemic, and I know how life is going to kind of pan out with income.
You've already got the ball rolling in that area.
Yeah. I mean, I've been training to get certified and working with a great organization in New York called You Gotta Believe. So there's actually a lot of other Broadway folks within that organization. So I've really, they focus on adopting older children. So it's been.
So would you become the actual, adopted mother, or do you start out as a foster child? What's the process?
I would become I'd become the actual mom. So yeah, I applaud all who can foster children, but as you can see from the beginning of this lovely broadcast, I have 4 cats, and that was not intentional either. That was because I had 2 of my own, and the former roommate I had 2 and left them in my care, and then I couldn't just like give them away. So no. I don't think I could foster an adult, a child, because I don't think I could like give them back. I don't have the emotional capability.
I want to talk a little bit about your life as a child. I'm always interested in going back to the 5-year-old self. Because for me, that is in most cases, not always, but it's a very pure time in your life. It's a time before, the layers of peer pressure and everything gets put upon you. So what were you like as a 5-year-old child? Where did you grow up? Do you have brothers and sisters? And I'd like to know a little bit about your parents as well.
I have one sister who's 4 years younger, and she has 3 children. She lives in California. And
are you a doting aunt?
I am such a doting aunt. And actually, my niece, who is 9, has always talked about being a little actress. And finally, my sister gave in and let her kind of start to dabble during the pandemic, because she needs a hobby. Mm-hmm. And she made her first self-tape audition the other day with me. I was super proud aunt.
That's great.
Maybe future aunt manager. I don't know. I was super proud.
Do you see yourself as being a Mama Rose type if that happens? No. Or do you see her as hands-off, let her do what she wants to do?
No, because everything is with her permission, because it's always like, do you want to do this? You have to decide, is this what you want to do? And yeah, so no, I'm not that. I want to make sure that she's enjoying it, and it's what she wants. She herself also is very just like, she knows even at 9. So the fact is, I love my parents dearly, but as a child, I wanted to act so badly, and it wasn't a thing that I was really fully supported on. I love you, Mom and Dad, if you're watching. But I want to be able to give that to her. So.
And now, where did you grow up?
My dad was in the Navy. So we didn't move actually all that often, but I grew up in California and then in Japan.
Is that where you were born?
Born Southern California, LA, Long Beach area. My dad we went to Japan, and I think that would have been the 5-year-old range, but I remember nothing of that time. I think I have one little inkling of an earthquake and us in the bathroom during an earthquake, but that's really all I remember. Mm-hmm. And then we moved to Virginia because my dad was in DC for about 8 years, and then we moved back to California, to Sacramento. I ended up going to junior college there first. I then ended up graduating from UC Irvine, just outside of LA, and then moved to New York, I think about 2 years after I graduated from college, because I started working.
Before we get there, what was your exposure to entertainment growing up? Television, records? In school, what was the exposure?
Well, my mom listened to Barbara. She had every record, so Barbara all the time.
Barbara Who, you can leave the room right now.
Wait, I'm sorry?
I said, if anyone says Barbara Who, you can leave the room.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. They're watching the wrong conversation. So there was that. Always was going. And then I drove my mother crazy because I grew up on Kids Incorporated, which I don't know if you're familiar with that, but like the very original. I had a super fan, all the records, the autographed headshots. I had my sequin headband. I wrote my own little shows that I would do in the living room with my microphone and my disco record player, what I mean, flashing in the background. And so that was what I was all about. And then we saw our first musical was Oliver at a dinner theater in Virginia. The Lazy Susan Dinner Theater, which I don't think it probably exists anymore, but maybe I'm wrong. And that was my first exposure to that. And then
was it instantaneous for you? Was it that moment that you want to be in
and that was the year, I believe, that I went to a camp called Follow Spot Theater Camp in Virginia with my best friend.
Your parents allowed you to do that. So
they did, but it was because it was with my best friend, and we could get on the school bus from school to go to this camp. So it wasn't like, a whole thing. Because by that time I had started playing the violin, and it was all about practicing the violin. Mm-hmm. And but once I had that little nugget, that's when it's like, this is so cool. And I was like, I would ask my mom, let me go to the audition at the dinner theater. And she's like, I don't know. And I would be like, I made her put together my resume. She was like, hemmed and hawed, take me to the audition at the dinner theater, which I didn't get it.
Now, what did your mom do?
My mom was like an admin at I don't know, at an office. I think maybe real estate or something. I don't even know.
Well, I grew up in South Carolina, and the idea of this kid wanting to go to New York and being an actor was, I may have well said I want to go to Mars.
Yes.
It was outside the realm of possibility. So how did you make the move to New York?
Well, that's also a cool little interesting tidbit story. So I started working right after college. I actually graduated school early because I had gotten hired in a prestigious summer stock. And then from there, I was like, being me, I was like in the middle of summer stock. I was already reading Backstage and driving myself the 3 hours to LA to go to audition. So that's what I did. And I ended up on the road touring with several different theater companies for young audiences. We ended up on the East Coast, and I had already been to New York once through UC Irvine for a month, and I really enjoyed it. And I was like, there's nothing for me here in LA. I'm just going to move to New York. And I literally had my 2 suitcases. I literally had $300. We had literally finished the tour, and we were on the East Coast. And instead of flying back to California where I lived, I had called down the alumni list of my school, found my roommate at the time, Lisa Gold. I don't know if you know
I
Lisa.
know Lisa.
Yeah, so Lisa became my roommate.
That's amazing.
Hi, shout out to Lisa.
Hi, Lisa, if you're watching.
And sight unseen, didn't know where I was. Moved to Weehawken, New Jersey, and I was like, "Where's Weehawken?" And she's like, "It's great. Don't worry, you'll be fine." And haven't since left the area, and obviously we're not roommates anymore. We've gone our separate ways, but haven't left the Jersey side. And here we are.
I want to ask you about that. I mean, that first day where you on your own go into Manhattan and for whatever, I mean, I could do a full show on my first day in New York.
Well, you know what I did on the first day? Because I had $300 and I knew I was going to need money. The first thing I did before I did anything was go to the temp office and wait and like fill out the forms and then got in with the temp office. And then
you were smart enough to know to do that. I wasn't. My first job in New York, I worked as a messenger for $6 an hour.
Oh, wow.
55 Water Street. It was a great job because it gave me a chance to really learn about New York City in the lower Manhattan. And New York, I came in 1979. It was a very different New York than I'm sure it was when you arrived here.
Yeah, 2000.
It's very different. So did you get hired right away with the temp agency?
I did, and I started working like the very next day, which was crazy. And I think I was so shocked by those jobs because, you go and you sit, nothing against those jobs. You go and you sit, and you just answer the phone. And then you have like this whole time, you sit on the computer, you do your little work, which was perfect for me at the time. And it was all very, a day-to-day thing. So if an audition came up, I could go to the audition. It all worked out. And I did that for a couple of years.
And how did you find out about the auditions when you first got here? Was it backstage?
Oh, it was backstage, all paper in backstage. And I got that religiously. I'd been getting that backstage since I was like in 5th grade.
Okay. Oh, well,
yeah.
Really?
Like,
wow.
Yes. And my mother thought it was the craziest thing. Like I would literally read backstage and soak it all in. And it makes sense that I help actors now in business because my mother literally said to me, you would read the backstage and come to me and tell me exactly how your career was going to go. You're going to go do the headshot and then you're going to do this and this. You like had it all planned out. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize I did that. She's like, oh, yeah. So, I drove very far when I lived in California to get a backstage, but I knew that that's what I needed to do to audition.
So how long did it take you before you got your first acting job?
It didn't take long from what I remember. I think I started working right away. Which, you come to audition, you come to New York, you audition, and then you get a job out of town, which is what was happening with me. I did a lot of dinner theater out of town, small little, regional non-equity things. I ended up then, I feel like my first really big job was I ended up getting hired on a cruise ship, the Scotia Prince, which doesn't exist anymore, but it sailed from Maine to Nova Scotia and then back. And I was on that during September 11th. So that would have been about a year later. So I did start working right away.
Well, I mean, excuse me for going there, but you bring it up. What was the experience like being on the ship with everything that was going on in your now home city?
Well, that was, I think, a very unique experience in and of itself because they thought that the people who flew the planes into the building actually sailed on our ship because it was a glorified cruise ship ferry and it was direct from Canada. So I don't know if actually that ended up being what happened, but that was like the rumor. And then we went into lockdown where we were not allowed off the ship for like several days. It was like 5 or 6 days. And I remember being the Americans on the ship was really difficult because there was only about 6 of us, just the entertainers were the Americans. Wow. And that's fairly typical of a cruise ship. At least it was then. I don't know if it is now. But I remember how we had to do the shows for everybody else who was working on the ship to keep everybody entertained. And it was difficult for us because we were not then allowed off in the United States from that point on until we literally were done with our contract on the ship. So, and it was very also, we as Americans take so much for granted in our lives, and being able to ask questions and talk to the powers that be about things that are happening in the world. And when that happened, I realized how well off we are in that realm, in where we live, because once you get on a ship, it is not that. It's for me, and again, maybe things have changed. I haven't been on a cruise ship in a long time, but it's very much more of like a third world country with a king. So, you lose all your rights, and we were not allowed to ask questions. We were not allowed to ask what was going on.
No, I mean,
we were not allowed to ask any of that. So it's very scary.
Like you didn't enjoy working on the cruise ship, or did you?
I did. I really enjoyed it until that happened. And then I realized, oh, this isn't the place where I want to be. I think I don't know if I would have, I've been on ships since then as a passenger, and I've actually been on a ship with a friend who was working on a ship, and I had a wonderful time. But I think just that circumstance set up a sequence of events that were not very enjoyable for those of us on that ship at that time, just due to the climate that we were in. And I've spoken to others who were on ships at that time, and we all had a very similar experience.
Now, how long after that did you return to New York, and how did things seem different for you being in New York after 9/11?
Well, I actually didn't end up returning right away. When I got off the ship, I ended up going to LA and being that my stuff was just packed up in my apartment in New York, because there wasn't anything to come back to. So I went to LA for a bit, and I spent about 5 or 6 months there doing some TV, and I lived with my grandparents, and they were very generous with me at the time. And then I moved back to New York about 5 or 6 months later, once I felt like I could work again.
Excuse me but you were getting work in LA. Was that pull to get back to New York so strong that you had?
Yeah, it just didn't. It just didn't feel like the place that I should be living. I'm very much, and I still am, I'm very much like, constantly knocking down doors and very independent. And LA wasn't not that for me. And I'm also a theater girl. I'm kind of all over the place now, but at that point in time, 19 years ago, whenever, I hadn't really done a lot of TV, and it was all very new to me. And so in that market where there wasn't a lot of theater and it was TV and like I had an office job. I worked in a factory that made street lamps. So I did accounting, and you couldn't just like take off to go to an audition. It was very much a different mentality there, and I just didn't quite jive with that as much. And I was like, this isn't the place where I'm going to end up being able to work. And that's when I came back.
No, was it an easy transition coming back?
Yeah, I jumped right back in, and I started working right away again. So it was the right thing. And that's also when I started dressing on Broadway as well, at that time, alongside my performing.
Now, how did that aspect of your career begin? And what are the pluses and minuses for you personally of being a Broadway dresser?
Well, that started in high school. Again, hemming and hawing. My parents were like, if you want to go do this, you have to figure out how to get there. There was an internship at Sacramento Music Circus, and that was about an hour from where I lived. And I wanted to do it. So I did end up getting to do it. And I convinced another person with me who had a car to do it with me. And that's how I did it the first summer. And then literally I acted in the show. And then you learned all the different things as you would as an intern. And then the head wardrobe supervisor at the time saw something in me, don't know what it was, and kind of like wrote me into the dressing end. And then I went back again the second summer, and then the next summer after that, I became the assistant to the supervisor. And then in college, the year before I graduated, I remember them calling me. We were in New York at the time, and saying, "Kim, do you want to come be our assistant again?" And I was like, "No, I want to be the supervisor." So
Good for you.
They hired me to be the wardrobe supervisor at Sacramento supervisor at Music Circus. I think I was like the youngest supervisor they've ever had, but that was a success. And so, but I never thought about it as something that I could do in New York. I just didn't have the mindset at the time that I could do both at the same time. I didn't know that that was possible. And it wasn't something that I thought about like necessarily as a career choice. But I was standing in line for an audition, actually in front of the Hotel Edison, and really early. And one of my volunteer dressers had walked by me while I was in line for this audition and said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, I'm an actor, you know, doing acting." He said, "Oh, well, I moved here to dress on Broadway. You should be dressing on Broadway." And I was like, "Oh, I guess." He's like, "Because I was a supervisor for him." And here he is moving to New York to dress. He's like, "I'll introduce you." And that's how that happened. So I ended up getting a job at Aida on Broadway and then Lion King on Broadway. And from that point on, and I had always gone in to the supervisors and said, "Well, you know, I'm an actor and I'm also a dresser, but I do act. And this is something I'm pursuing. So I can't take full-time work. I can only take work as a swing, but I'm a great swing." And that they respected that. And that's kind of how I became known in the Broadway world as a dresser. And it's been really good for me and good to me. I mean, health and pension and always having that work and not having to worry. And then them being the supervisors being very gracious to me because they did see that I was actually working. Do you know what I mean? Respecting that. And I would say, so that's always been a positive. The negative is just, you know, I am somebody who I've been in a Broadway show, but I haven't been in a Broadway show as far as like a production contract. So, and I've come so close so many times and it just hasn't clicked. But that's the hard thing about being a dresser, because you're like, I would like to be on that stage, you know what I mean? But
you know,
it'll happen.
When I first came to New York, I mean, I did a lot of summer stock, and you know, one of my early jobs in New York, and I did a lot of theater with Chaz Palminteri, believe it or not, at the 13th Street Playhouse, the Repertory Theater, and in order to perform there, you had to become a member of the theater. And some nights I would be cleaning the bathrooms. Other nights I would be doing the lighting. Other nights I would be ushering. You would do all these other things. And I think for me personally, I think that every artist that finds himself in the spotlight, when you do these other things behind the scenes, you have a greater appreciation for what those people do. And especially now, you know, in the middle of the pandemic, I say I have such an appreciation for the sound and lighting people who were out there doing, because I do it, I'm a one-man band.
Yeah.
I don't have a team. I do it all myself. And it's here. But I want to ask you, with everything that you were doing, when, where, and how did you get your equity card?
Oh, that's a good question. I had been offered it a couple of times through gigs in New York. I was also could have gotten my weeks when I was at Music Circus. I could have gotten my weeks at the first summer stock job that I got right out of college. But at any of those points in times, it's so funny, I never took it.
And what were your reasons at the time?
I wasn't ready. I didn't think I could use it at that point in time, because I knew realistically, having done so much studying of the business, having where I went to school, it was very much a realistic view of, like, especially with me and my vocal type and things, you're not gonna hit that until you get a little bit older. So I got that, and I just knew that I needed to build up the credits. So I didn't take it. But then I started doing TV, and interestingly enough, I got my SAG card, and then I started losing jobs on the equity side, because at some point in time, there are some theater companies that they had to have, like, you know, the equity versus the non, but they would bring in both for the part, but then due to the contract or whatever, at some point, I don't think it's quite like this anymore, they always had to go with the equity person versus me. Like, I think I lost like 2 or 3 jobs then because I didn't actually have my card. And then because I was in SAG, I ended up doing this really, really horrible not a summer stock dinner theater gig. The theater is not around anymore. And it was awful, and we didn't end up getting paid, and it was bad. It was just a horrible experience.
I've been
and
there.
I was like, I can't do this again. And literally I got done with that contract, and I went back to New York, and I walked right into the equity office and said, I would like my card. And then literally, I kid you not, about a month or 2 months after I got my card, I booked Kid from Brooklyn, the Danny Kaye Musical, which then took me on to Florida. And that was the show that begun my whole journey with then opening Danny and Sylvia Off-Broadway and then playing Fanny Brice. So the timing is...
I want to talk about Fanny Brice because you've become such a go-to person when it comes to her life and career and everything. And it was funny this morning, AJ Hunsaker has a wonderful page, Broadway. Were you there this morning? And he posted the mugshot of Nikki Arnstein, the real Nikki Arnstein.
Oh, yes. Okay. I didn't see it on the Facebook page, but I have seen that.
And so I thought, how appropriate. Nikki or Fanny, one of them are reaching out to me because you're going to be on the show tonight. But had you thought a lot about Fanny Brice prior to delving into that world?
There's two things that had always been brought up, which is in high school, I did have a teacher say to me, because you want to do musical theater, because you're Jewish, because you look like this woman, you should think about Funny Girl. But that was the only, then it went like, psh, gone. And then when I was doing a show, a dinner theater production of Fiddler on the Roof, they had said to me, we're doing Funny Girl next season. We would like to potentially use you as Fanny. Will you learn the part? And then we'll see how it works out. And I did spend a year learning the part. I mean, I drove my teachers insane, learning every song, going through every scene. I salute them because they literally walked me through it. And everybody in my classes must have been driving them crazy, but I did do it. And then I didn't book that show. So then that was like, well, okay, I don't know. But then it's interesting because then it just came back around during Danny and Sylvia when I was asked to start workshopping one night with Fanny Brice. But I had already done all that research at that point because I was like tunnel vision of I'm going to play Fanny Brice and Funny Girl when the dinner theater was like, we want you to play Fanny Brice and Funny Girl. And then of course it didn't work out.
Let me ask you a question about that. Do you feel that the legend of Barbra Streisand has made it difficult for future productions of Funny Girl? Or do you think that the best way around it? Now, I've seen other productions of Funny Girl that I loved. Leslie Kritzer did it a few years ago. Yeah, did you see it?
I saw it on video at the New York Public Library. And Leslie, I love you dearly. She's a friend. So
Leslie Kritzer.
She's brilliant.
Talk to her because I want her in your seat. I mean, not your seat, but I want her in this room. I love Leslie, and she was brilliant as Fanny Brice.
Yeah, she was pretty brilliant. And
Diane Findlay was brilliant as her mom.
And I told her she was my first experience with actually watching the stage version of Funny Girl, because that's when I first was like learning the role. That's the video that I saw.
Now, and again, I'm going to digress for just a moment, but I saw a post today from someone who, it was a post about Christopher Plummer, who our hats are off to you, Mr. Plummer.
Yeah.
All the work you've done. But someone had posted about watching the movie again last night after hearing that he had passed. And somebody that was in the original Broadway company of The Sound of Music really went off on a tear about how they hated the movie and everything because it really wasn't The Sound of Music. Obviously, they're two different entities.
Right.
And the movie is a very different animal than the Broadway musical of Funny Girl. And I know that a couple of years ago that Harvey Fierstein was brought in to write a completely different book. So what are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I saw the Fierstein version. I saw the West End, which is the Fierstein version.
Yes.
It's not that different than the Broadway show. It's just tweaked a little bit. And there's an extra song for Nick Arnstein in there. But it's not really that, it's not that different than the original.
Now, was that a trunk song or was that a song that was written specifically?
No, it was a song written for him in the new version of Funny Girl. I personally... I don't think I've ever seen a live version of Funny Girl in the theater. No, I take that back. I have, but I haven't seen it because I worked backstage. I dressed Laurie Beachman in Funny Girl at Music Circus, but at that point in time, that was like not even in my periphery of what I was actually watching. But so in studying the show and like said, I think the movie, this is going to sound sort of strange because I would love to do a production of Funny Girl, but I think the movie actually, the movie of Funny Girl with Barbara almost works a little better than the stage version, but I obviously don't know what the stage version looked like when Barbara was in it, obviously. But the show, I mean, the show has its faults. It's not perfect. It certainly is a star vehicle for whoever's playing Fanny Brice. I think the problem that we get, and I know what I think is probably my own personal problem, which is why the role has eluded me and I've done all these other things, but not Funny Girl, is that Barbara has her stamp on it so much that is the expectation when people walk into the theater to see the musical Funny Girl. So I think there is this thing that people want to kind of bring Barbara somehow into that theater with the voice or the sound or the look or whatever it is.
Well, although you're not doing Funny Girl, you are doing
right. No, I'm not.
You're doing a more representative version of her story.
Right.
Do you think Funny Girl, the musical, has hurt you, or do you think it's hindered you as far as your own show is concerned? Do people come into the theater with a certain mindset, and do you feel the click, that moment when you win them over?
That's so interesting because I think there is a dichotomy to that, because people want to see my show because they want to learn more of the real story. But then there are the people who are worried to see my show because they're like, can anybody test Barbara's rendition of Funny Girl? You know what I mean? And I'd like to dare them to see it just so they can see, because I'm not Barbara. I'm a totally like 180 of Barbara. So I'm not trying to be
And Barbara isn't Kimberly.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
yes.
And I love her dearly.
Yes,
like, one of these days
I'm a huge fan.
Right. But I feel like, I don't know, you know what I mean? I don't really know if it's been a hindrance per se. I really think that people who enjoy Funny Girl, my show piques their interest. Whether or not they get a ticket to see it, I can't control that. But like, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Now, what has surprised you the most about Fanny Brice in your studies?
Oh, I don't know. She was such a woman that was like, she had so much chutzpah. Like, I mean, I don't even have the words. She was like beyond her time. She was like a woman who would have existed today. You know what I mean? In the fact of what she did and accomplished in a man's world. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just so, and she also is, and I don't think people realize this at all, because like Funny Girl doesn't hit on this at any way, shape, or form, but like she was so integral in everything that we have now, as far as in the theater and in American musical theater culture, in our song, in what we have in the American songbook, in like the comedians of today. Like she was the first, like she was this huge influence over so much of what we have today. And I just don't think people realize that. And I also just think she had such a hard life. You know what I mean? Like she had these 3 awful marriages especially with Nick Arnstein. Like she loved him, but oh my God, like what he put her through. I don't know. I think it's just amazing to me how this woman just survived all of that and did what she did in a man's world and at the top of her game. It's kind of amazing.
But what is it about Fanny Brice with you personally? I mean, I look at, all that you've done, not only at St. Luke's, but beyond. And now you're even live streaming the show so that people can go and watch it. And we'll talk about that and how people can tune in to watch that. But does she have a hold on you? Or do you have a hold on her?
I think it's kind of both. There's a little theatrical device that happens in my show that's currently streaming, that just at the very end where you get a sense of the meaning of her for me, because it is me playing Fanny the whole time. And then at the very end, there's just a little theatrical device. But she has had such a hold over me since I'm playing her. The more I play her, I feel like the more I become Kim Greenberg. It's so interesting to me. Like, I don't know if I was her in a former life or something, but like, it's given me such permission to own who I am. And she is just, I can't even explain it. She's such a part of who I am and rings so true. I don't know. I can't even explain that. People have said that to me too when they watch me play her. It's like Kim Greenberg just disappears and there's like this woman that's what we're watching, this woman, like this real woman. And I was like, and well, great, you know, I'm an actor, great, but it's beyond that, because even I myself feel that. It's like you don't feel that with everything you do as an actor and a performer. You know, it's that losing yourself mentality of like it's some kind of other plane, but then it infuses the rest of my life as well, as far as like giving myself that permission. And I don't know, it's kind of a little both. But then I also feel like there's some really strange coincidences that have happened over the course of me playing her, that I feel like she's somewhere over here going, hi, I'm just going to help you out. Let me just, you know, like little guardian angel, let me just tap you on the shoulder. Because there are some really strange things and stories that I have that, like, how did that even work out to get to this point? I have no idea. You know, she must have just been smiling down on me or something.
So what's the next opportunity for people to get a chance to see this production?
Well, my solo show is called Fabulous Fanny Brice, and it plays on dates and times through April at this point. It's a live stream. It's live, but it's a taped performance from a live show in front of an audience from a couple of years ago. And the next show is February 13th. I believe it's at 7. And then onward on dates through April. So it's just like a theater show. You got to actually
and please put the information on my website, on my Facebook page.
Yes, and if you Google me, I'm so sorry you're choking. If you Google me, have some water. Have some water.
Yes.
If you Google me, or if you go to my website, or if you go to Seller Tickets, you'll find it.
And feel free to
post it on my page,
as I said.
Yeah, it's very easy to find.
And what do you hope to do? I mean, where do you want to take this show in the future, post-pandemic?
Well, it had several tour stops before the pandemic happened, and actually those have been pushed to 2022. So in February of next year, I'll be in Arizona as part of a theater season. And
what theater?
It's like one night only. It's called Green Valley Rec. It's you know, it's a theater for a very large community there.
Oh, great.
And then right now we're in talks to go to a theater in Kansas. The paperwork is not signed. I can't divulge that information, but that'll probably happen very soon. And I have other theaters in California, in Colorado, and several other places that currently, just because of COVID, like talks kind of stalled. But hopefully once we come back out of the pandemic, I'll be able to do it live again. It's different. The show that you see on Stellar is actually a bit different than the live show, because the video is 1 hour and 15 and the live show is about 1 hour and 45. So it kind of, if you see it on screen, on your computer, on your television, hopefully, you know, you'll want to maybe see it live as well, because you'll get to see some other things that are not there.
And you've also come to be known as the Broadway person.
The Broadway expert, yeah.
The Broadway expert. How did that come about?
Oh my gosh, again, it's a Fanny thing. You know, when I started doing Fanny, and I was doing the dressing and I was doing the acting, and I've always had that weird business mind from reading Backstage from when I was a kid. And I have my dad's a bit of an entrepreneur, and I've kind of always just sort of thought that way. And I was sort of just like, well, I'm going to make the most of it and figure out different ways to put this in the world. As far as when I was doing One Night with Fanny Brice, Off-Broadway, and Danny and Sylvia. And I started experimenting with the different things. And then once I ended up creating my own show, Fabulous Fanny Brice, and putting that into the world, people started asking me, how are you doing all of this? And also people were also intrigued by my backstage as well, by doing it all, because nobody had really talked about that at that point in time, about being able to do that. And so then I started getting asked for interviews on certain platforms. And I remember I had like this this article on Backstage, and then people asked for my help as a coach, and I would just give advice freely, as people would come to me. I think I helped a couple of people get their Broadway shows. I mean, and then somebody was finally like, you should maybe consider being paid for this. And I was like, really? This is, I don't know. But so that has since grown into me being the Broadway expert, which is basically I create content, I interview, just like you interview people who work on Broadway, on stage or backstage. I help performers and backstage artists if they want to like work on business and marketing and strategy, teaching, just runs the kind of the gamut. But I love it. It helps me stay inspired, and it helps me because seeing them successful again comes right back around to me and making me want to go, okay, well, I'm going to keep hustling and trying to achieve my goals, because then I can share how I did that with them. And it's kind of like this reciprocal thing. And I'm also all about, you know what I mean? Like, there's no secrets. I really don't want there to be secrets. This is a collaborative art form. And I'm not into people who are like, I'm not going to tell you how I did that. I'm really not into that. Like, I'm like, I want to help you. You know what I mean? And it's been, and two, that's something I learned from helping others, which is like, I need to ask for more help as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, in order to be able to.
I mean, you and I both know that in this business, there are givers and there are takers. You're obviously a giver. There are some people who are takers who want the results of your expertise without really willing to do the work. Do you find that most of the people that come to you are either just starting out, people who have been in the business for quite some time, or people who were returning to all of this?
It runs the gamut, but for the most part, it's people who have been in the business who want help to like rethink strategy and things like that, or people who are like, have been here maybe a year and they want help, or people who have been in it a while and want to know, like, how can I shift my mindset, or how can I do all the things, or how can I think differently about putting this in the universe or creating work. Or I'm so much too about like push through the fear, do something scary. You know what I mean? Like, there are no rules. Like, the rules, we think they're rules. There's no rules. You know what I mean? Like, kick the box, open the window. You know what I mean? Someone closes the door. Where's the window? You know what I mean? Push the window up. I mean, not that, you know what I mean? Don't do anything crazy, but we're in a business. And if you think about it that way, you're never going to really, hurt yourself.
The biggest thing is take chances, take risk, do it.
Yeah.
I mean, the worst possible, my philosophy is that this business boils down to one of two things: yes or no. And yes, I will watch your show. Yes, I will tune into your live stream. Yes, I will support you in your endeavors. Or no, I'm not interested.
Right.
And the people who are not interested, I'm going to drop a name again. Carol Channing once said to me, for every person who likes you in this business, there are an equal number who don't.
Yeah.
Get used to it. And it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with who they are, where they are in their lives. And you never know what someone else is going through. So get out there, take chances. Get in touch with Kimberly, because she knows what she's talking about. Now, you interviewed me. Do you remember interviewing me at Barnes and Noble?
Yes, for Broadway Blogspot. We did when that was when my coaching was kind of first starting all that expert stuff, and I had a website called Broadway Blogspot. We totally interviewed you. It was amazing.
Wow. And I mean, and that Barnes and Noble is gone as well.
I know.
I'm thinking, so many things. I mean, one thing that has come out of the pandemic for me is, none of us are promised tomorrow or next week or next year. So what harm is it to take chances anymore? Just take those chances.
Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting because I've always been that person to like, well, I'm just going to try this. Let's see what happens. But the more it is, you'll get plenty of people that'll say, no, thank you. And you will get some people who say, of course, let me help you. Or you'll get that thing you asked for, whatever it is. But But once you start doing it, and once the asks become harder, or taking the risk is harder, it's even still scary. The scary never goes away. So I think just giving yourself that permission is the best thing to continue to remind me. Even me, I have to remind myself to do that. I mean, I'm constantly reading, like, you know, the self-help books, and I have my own little life. I have a life coach. I have people that are consistently going to me and being like, it's okay. You can do this thing. It'll be fine. The world is not going to end. Try this. I mean, even with my solo show, that's been, it's been so challenging during this time with Fabulous Fanny streaming, because there's so much content, and I have to really take scary steps to figure out how can I put this in the world so people see it. I think we all artists also suffer with imposter syndrome. Lord knows, you know what I mean? Like getting out of those vampires that are in our heads. You know what I mean? It's like they never go away. So, and again, I think too, the even more important thing, and I love having you in my life for this specific reason. It's like surround yourself with people who are like doing the things that you would like to be doing, or that you admire, or consistently hustling, or stepping outside the box, or, you know, doing what they love. And the more you surround yourself with those people, the more those other people will start gravitating to you as well. And things just become a little easier. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
I don't know.
Well, I can't believe this, but we are at the end of our program.
No!
So I want to thank everybody who tuned in tonight. I hope you all enjoyed the show. If you did, and if you haven't done so already, please go to my website, richardskipper.com. Sign my guest book with your thoughts about the show. That helps to boost me in other markets. I'm taking tomorrow night off, believe it or not, because it's the Super Bowl.
It is.
And I'm not going to compete. I'm not stupid. I'm not competing with a Super Bowl. But I will be back on Monday, and I am so excited. I'm going to be celebrating Andrea Marcovici at A Kern Valentine, her new show. For those of you who do not know, she is the queen of cabaret. It's not me. It's Andrea Marcovici. She is incredible, and I am looking forward to celebrating her. I end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. After tonight's show, I want you to go to your Facebook friends list, go to the 6th name that pops up, reach out to that person, and let them know what they mean to you. Not with a text, not with an email, not with a private message, but a phone call. I am telling you, I've asked people to do this, and the emails that I get from the responses are phenomenal. So you too, Kimberly, go to your 6th friend and say, Richard Skipper told me to call you today. You know, as my dear friend David Friedman always says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. You never know what someone else is going through. Have a little bit more patience with people. Have a little bit more tolerance with people. If, you know, and again, because the Super Bowl is happening tomorrow, if you are going to be around other people, please mask, wash your hands, socially distance, do everything that you need to do so that Kimberly and myself can be in the theater this time next year.
Hallelujah.
That's where we want to go. So Kimberly, I'm going to give you the final word. Anything that you want to say about anything that we talked about tonight that you'd want to expound upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish that we had, or just any message that you want to put out to everyone tonight. And again, I thank you for the gifts that you've given to the world and that you're going to continue to give. I just think the best is yet to come.
Oh, thank you so much. This is like such an honor for me to have been asked to be here. So you've interviewed so many of people that I admire. So I'm just happy to be like in this little mix. And I'm just telling everybody, please be safe. Please try to stay healthy as you can, positive, find those creative projects that fulfill you during this time, embrace the time if you can, whether it's to continue to create some sort of momentum or to take time for yourself for reevaluating, whatever it is, because I think we all just need to remember that those things are all all really important. And also see my show, Fabulous Fanny Brice. Come see it.
And you can read about it on my Facebook page.
I'll bring you much classic musical theater joy to you, and that's what gives me pleasure about being able to do that now.
Thank you, and love to your cats as well.
Oh, thank you. They didn't make a second appearance.
Thank you. Love you. Good.
Thank you. Bye.